After escorting her mother-in-law out following the birthday celebration, the wife accidentally discovered a small packet of white powder in her bag. Just 15 minutes later, the mother-in-law returned beaming with joy, and not alone, but with the police. But she had no clue how deeply she'd regret coming back, for her daughter-in-law had a surprise waiting. And before we continue, write in the comments from which country you're watching the video, and also check if you're subscribed to the channel, as I share interesting life stories with you every day. Okay, let's enjoy the story. The evening turned out unusually cold for late March. Outside, remnants of snow lingered, crusted with gray ice, while a pre-spring dampness hung in the air, chilling to the bone. But inside Beatrice's apartment, it was hot and stuffy, not just from the humming radiators and the scent of roasted meat, but from the too close proximity of people who couldn't stand each other. Sophia sat at the festive table, pretending to be engrossed in conversation with the woman next to her, Aunt Clara, Beatrice's sister. In reality, she was tracking every word her mother-in-law uttered. Beatrice was glowing today. Her 55th birthday had gathered nearly all the relatives and acquaintances. She accepted congratulations, unwrapped gifts, and her gaze kept drifting back to Sophia. There was something predatory in that look, as if she'd thrown the party not just for herself, but to once again assert that she was the mistress of this house, not some outsider who'd stolen her son. Sophia knew this all too well. 3 years of marriage to Daniel had taught her patience, but sometimes it felt like her nerves were about to snap. She caught herself bracing for any trick from her mother-in-law. "Sophie, dear," Beatrice suddenly chimed in loudly, ensuring everyone heard. "You're awfully quiet today. Maybe the wine's not to your taste? Or the cake didn't please you?" The guests chuckled in unison. Sophia felt blood rush to her cheeks, but she forced a tight, cool smile. "Everything's perfect, Beatrice. You always make it so." The words almost sounded like a compliment, but Beatrice caught the irony and narrowed her eyes. "Well, as long as your husband likes it," she remarked, glancing at Daniel. "You know, men love a woman who knows how to enjoy life." Daniel, seated to his mother's right, coughed awkwardly and looked away. As usual, he didn't want to get involved. Sophia felt the familiar emptiness in her chest. Over 3 years, she'd grown used to her husband, preferring not to step between her and his mother. He's still afraid of her, even at 35, she thought. The clock struck 9, and guests began to leave. Some laughed drunkenly. Others complained about their blood pressure. A few said goodbye too noisily. Beatrice looked satisfied, like a general after a successful parade. Sophia helped clear the table, slung her bag over her shoulder, and joined her mother-in-law in the hallway. "Thanks for the party," she said, striving for politeness. "It was all so lovely." "Oh, of course," Beatrice replied, and unexpectedly brushed her hand lightly. "You did well, Sophie dear, you really tried." Sophia was surprised. Praise from her mother-in-law was rare. She even wondered if fatigue and alcohol had softened Beatrice a bit. They said goodbye, and the door closed behind her. Sophia returned to the living room where Daniel was yawning, unfolding the sofa bed for overnight relatives. "How was it?" he asked, glancing at his wife. "Same as always," Sophia replied curtly. She didn't want to start a conversation with guests around. She went to the bedroom, tossed her bag on the bed, and suddenly noticed the zipper was slightly ajar. Sophia rarely left it open. Thinking she'd forgotten in the hustle, she unzipped it fully. Inside lay a small plastic packet, filled with white powder. Sophia froze. Her heart pounded so hard her vision blurred. "What is this?" she whispered, carefully pulling it out. The powder was fine and crumbly, like flour. But it wasn't flour. A word flashed in her mind, one she feared even thinking. Drugs. Sophia's legs buckled. She quickly zipped the bag, tucked the packet into a side pocket, and approached the door. Thoughts swirled. This couldn't be an accident. Who? When? How? The answer hit her. Beatrice's face appeared before her eyes, her soft smile in the hallway, the odd lightness in her touch. Her mother-in-law. Only she could have done it. Sophia stepped into the living room, trying to stay calm, but a storm raged inside. She scanned the room. Relatives were absorbed in their chatter. No one noticed. "Daniel?" she called softly to her husband. He approached, slightly puzzled by her expression. "What happened?" Sophia hesitated. Tell him or stay quiet. What if he didn't believe her? What if he sided with his mother? She clenched her teeth and just shook her head. Later, Sophia stood frozen by the window, feeling a rumble build in her chest like a low tolling bell. She saw a car with flashing lights stop below the building, and her heart clenched in pain. "Who's that?" she asked, though she already knew. Daniel turned and shrugged. "Mom and the police." He couldn't believe his own words, but a dry voice echoed in the hallway. "Good evening, Sergeant Kane, precinct officer. We received a report. Please open up." Sophia gripped the windowsill so hard her knuckles whitened. Beatrice, it had to be her. Of course it was. Daniel opened the door. Two uniformed officers entered, one younger, the other older, with a weary face and a folder under his arm. Behind them, Beatrice. Her gaze was triumphant, like she'd brought home long-awaited guests to finally set things right. "There she is," Beatrice said, pointing at Sophia. "I told you, officers. My son shouldn't live with a woman like that." "Mom, what are you saying?" Daniel stammered. Sophia stepped forward, feeling a dry lump rise in her throat. She tried to speak calmly, but her voice trembled. "What's going on?" "We have a report," the senior officer replied. "Allegations of possessing illegal substances. We need to search the premises." Daniel's mouth fell open, but Beatrice strode triumphantly into the room and looked around. "Check her bag," she said, her voice barely hiding glee. "Right there, I'm sure of it." Sophia felt everything inside turn ice cold. Her bag was in the bedroom. With that packet, if they found it, she knew it was over. It didn't matter that she was innocent. The mere discovery would bury her under suspicion so heavy, proving otherwise would be nearly impossible. Sophia took a deep breath. "No, I won't let them win. I have to hold on." "Do you have a warrant?" she asked, and her voice came out steadier than expected. The officers exchanged glances. The senior one nodded slightly. "Yes, all in order. We need to conduct the search." He pulled out papers and handed them to Daniel. He signed mechanically, confusion and fear swirling in his eyes. They entered the bedroom. Beatrice led the way, like the owner. She nearly touched the bag, but pretended to defer to the police. "Right here," she pointed. "Check carefully." The younger officer bent down and grabbed the bag. Sophia felt her heart pounding so loud it seemed everyone could hear. Now they'd find it. Now. And suddenly, a thought struck like lightning. Sophia remembered the small camera she'd installed in the hallway 6 months ago after small items started vanishing from her bag. It recorded everything in the corridor, including the moment Beatrice touched her hand and possibly slipped something in. There was a chance. The officer pulled out the packet. White powder, in clear plastic. A oppressive silence fell over the apartment, broken only by the creak of police boots on the linoleum. The white packet lay on the table in an evidence bag, like an alien intruder crashing into Sophia's life. She sat on the sofa, back straight, forcing herself to breathe slow and deep. Panic surged inside, but she pushed it down, like a seasoned swimmer keeping her head above water in a storm. Beatrice, on the other hand, couldn't hide her satisfaction. She stood beside the officers, adjusting her bright silk scarf on her shoulders, a gift from Daniel. Triumph gleamed in her eyes, and her lips twitched with a barely restrained smile. "Well, officers, I told you right away," she addressed the senior one. "This woman's been acting strange for ages, and my son's suffering because of her. Now you've got proof." "Mom, shut up," Daniel finally burst out. "Do you even realize what you're saying?" "I do," she replied coldly. "I'm saving you from shame and a life with someone who'll drag you into the abyss." Daniel paled but said nothing more. He darted his eyes between his mother and wife, as if unsure whom he feared more. The senior officer, Detective Vaughn, was a man in his 40s with thick mustaches and the tired gaze of someone who'd waded through human filth more often than he liked. He watched Sophia closely. "Miss Harper," he began in an official tone, "you understand the found substance requires testing? Until results come in, we must treat you as the person in possession of a suspicious item." Sophia nodded. "I understand, but I also want to state this packet was planted on me, and I have proof." Beatrice jerked her head up. "More fantasies?" she snorted. "You saw it in her bag. What proof?" Sophia turned her face slowly toward her. The camera in the hallway. It recorded everything. For a second, the room went so quiet you could hear the clock tick off a minute. Beatrice paled but quickly mustered a smirk. What camera? Playing spy now? A perfectly ordinary one, Sophia replied. Ever since things started disappearing from my bag, I decided to play it safe. It records to a memory card, and the footage shows who touched my bag. Vaughn narrowed his eyes. Show us? Of course, Sophia said, allowing herself a faint smile for the first time that evening. While the younger officer bagged the packet and handled paperwork, Sophia headed to the bedroom. Beatrice tracked her every move, irritation or confusion flashing in her eyes. Daniel approached his wife. Sophia, what are you doing? He whispered. What I have to, she whispered back. Trust me for once. He recoiled as if slapped. The words hit harder than he let on. A minute later, Sophia returned with a small flash drive. She plugged it into the laptop and pulled up the footage on screen. The hallway came into view. Guests saying goodbye, noisily dressing, laughing. And there Beatrice approaches Sophia, places a palm on her hand, a quick gesture with the other, and something slips into the bag. The motion was fast, almost invisible, but zoomed in, it left no doubt. The officers leaned closer. The younger one even whistled. Clear as day, he said. Vaughn rubbed his chin silently. Beatrice turned ashen. That's edited, she cried. She set it all up. She recorded and tampered with it. Sophia lifted her eyes. It's straight from the card, no edits. Take the original if you want. Daniel looked like the ground was crumbling beneath him. He stared at his mother, then his wife, disbelief etched in his face. Mom, he whispered. Why? Beatrice didn't answer. She stood, clutching her purse, knuckles white. We're required to seize the recording too, Vaughn said, for verification. Sophia nodded. Take it. I've got nothing to hide. What followed felt like a dream. The officers searched the apartment, drew up protocols, collected evidence. Beatrice protested, screaming she was being framed, but Vaughn just shook his head wearily. He'd seen such stories too often to buy the hysterics. Sophia sat on the sofa, watching her mother-in-law's carefully built plan collapse. Inside, relief battled growing anxiety. She knew this was just the beginning. When the officers left, taking the packet and drive, a heavy silence settled over the apartment. Daniel slumped at the table, face in hands. I don't understand, he whispered. Why all this? Why? Sophia watched him long before replying. Because your mother never accepted me. To her, I'm the enemy, and today she decided she could destroy me. Daniel lifted his eyes. Pain flooded them. But this is a crime. Sophia nodded. Exactly. Beatrice stayed silent. She stood by the window, turned away, shoulders trembling. It seemed she searched for words but found none. Sophia rose. I'm going to bed. Tomorrow will be tough. And she left for the bedroom, leaving Daniel and his mother in the living room. She knew interrogations, checks, new attacks lay ahead, but the main thing had happened. Beatrice had exposed herself, and now this war would take a whole new turn. Morning started with a call. Sophia woke to the sharp ring of the phone, heart instantly tightening. She knew who it might be. Hello? Her voice wavered, but she steadied it. Miss Harper came a gravelly male voice. This is the police department. Please come in at 10 a.m. for a statement. Sophia closed her eyes. She'd expected it. Yes, of course I'll be there, she said evenly. Daniel sat at the table, nursing a half-drunk cup of tea. He'd barely slept. Red eyes, weary face, every line radiating confusion. They called? He asked, though he'd overheard. Sophia nodded. Yes, I'm going. He was silent for a long time, then said, I don't get how this happened. Last night, it felt like I'd lost my mother. Sophia met his eyes directly. And think who took her away, me or her? The call came closer to noon. Another summons for Sophia. This time, they met in a spacious office with neat charts and folders on the walls instead of peeling paint. Detective Vaughn looked more serious than usual. We have the lab results, he said, nodding at a folder. The packet contained actual narcotics. Sophia sighed. She'd anticipated it, but hearing it hit hard. However, Vaughn continued, after reviewing the footage and circumstances, we've concluded your planting claim holds up. Plus, we have witnesses. Sophia lifted her head. Yes. Vaughn nodded. A case has been opened against her for attempted illegal trafficking. Those words rang like a sentence. Sophia felt not joy, but a strange emptiness. She pictured Beatrice proud, confident, controlling now the accused. Could she avoid punishment? Sophia asked. Possibly the court might consider her age, health, the detective said. But attempting to frame you? That's serious. Sophia nodded. When she got home and told Daniel everything, he sat silent for ages, then said, "I don't know how to live with this." "With what exactly?" Sophia asked. "With my mother being a criminal and me defending her all this time? Not you." Sophia took his hand. "You have a choice. Keep your eyes shut and believe her lies, or open them and face the truth." He stared at her long. Something new and heavy but real in his gaze. Days dragged in anticipation of the trial. Sophia tried to live normally. Work, home, friends. But deep down, she felt on the brink of something massive and final. Daniel withdrew, talking little, but sometimes at night he'd come to her, hug her, and whisper, "I'm sorry." She didn't reply, just stayed silent and stroked his hand. At the trial, Beatrice looked different. No more arrogance, no haughty air. She sat in a dark, severe suit, hands trembling. Her voice was quiet, breaking at times. "I meant no harm," she repeated. "I just wanted to save my son." Sophia sat beside Daniel. She heard those words and understood. Beatrice still wouldn't admit fault. She justified herself even here. The judge listened, reviewed the materials. The sentence was lenient. Probation, community service, mandatory treatment. But for Beatrice, it was worse than prison. Her pride was shattered. After court, the three emerged into the street. Freezing air burned their skin. "My boy," Beatrice addressed her son. "You understand I did it for you." He looked at her long. Pain, hurt, exhaustion filled his eyes. "No, Mom," he said at last. "You did it for yourself." She flinched as if struck. Sophia silently took her husband's hand. At home, they sat quiet for hours. Then Daniel said, "I've realized one thing. Trust can't be bought with words, it's built with actions." Sophia nodded. "Exactly." He looked at her, and for the first time in ages, his gaze held not doubt, but resolve. "I choose you," he said. Weeks passed. Beatrice rarely appeared. She'd call sometimes, but Sophia felt her words no longer held power. Sophia and Daniel learned to live anew. It wasn't easy. Wounds lingered, trust rebuilt slowly, but each day was a step forward. Sophia knew she'd won not just the battle with her mother-in-law, she'd won the right to her own life, and now no one could take it from her. A few months had slipped by since the trial, and the apartment that once felt like a battlefield now hummed with a fragile peace. Sophia had thrown herself into small changes, repainting the walls in soft blues to wash away the shadows of that night, planting herbs on the windowsill as a quiet act of reclaiming her space. Daniel, too, had transformed, stepping out from under his mother's long shadow. He'd started therapy, confronting the fears that had kept him silent for so long, and their evenings were filled with honest talks that stretched into the night, rebuilding the trust brick by brick. But beneath the calm, Sophia sensed an unfinished thread, like a storm cloud lingering on the horizon. One crisp autumn afternoon, the phone rang with a number Sophia hadn't seen in weeks. Beatrice's. Her heart skipped, a mix of dread and curiosity surging through her. "Hello?" she answered, her voice steady but guarded. On the other end, Beatrice's tone was subdued, stripped of its usual sharpness. "Sophie, I need to see you both. Please. It's important." Daniel, overhearing, tensed but nodded when Sophia looked his way. "We'll come," he said firmly, his hand finding hers, a silent promise of solidarity. They met at a neutral cafe downtown, the kind with worn wooden tables and the aroma of fresh coffee masking the tension in the air. Beatrice arrived early, looking smaller somehow, her proud posture softened by the weight of consequences. Community service had humbled her, the therapy sessions mandated by the court chipping away at her defenses. She fiddled with her scarf as they sat, avoiding eye contact at first. I didn't come to make excuses," she began, her voice cracking like thin ice. "What I did was wrong, monstrous even. I thought I was protecting my son, but really I was terrified of losing him. To you, to change." Sophia leaned forward, her eyes locking onto Beatrice's. "You almost destroyed me," she said. Not with anger, but with the raw truth that demanded acknowledgement. "You planted evidence, called the police, tried to paint me as a criminal. Do you understand the fear you put me through? The doubt it sowed in my marriage?" Daniel squeezed Sophia's hand under the table, his silence a shield rather than avoidance this time. Beatrice's eyes welled up, tears tracing lines down her cheeks. "I do now. The therapy. It's opened my eyes. I was wrong about you, Sophie. You're strong, stronger than I ever gave you credit for. And Daniel, my boy, I've hurt you most of all by holding on too tight." She reached into her bag, pulling out a small envelope. "This isn't much, but it's a start. Letters from me to both of you. Apologies, real ones. And I'm moving to my sister's for a while. To give you space. To heal myself." The words hung heavy. A turning point, wrapped in vulnerability. Daniel's face softened, conflict warring in his expression. "Mom, thank you. For saying it. For trying." He glanced at Sophia, seeking her lead. She nodded slowly, a spark of compassion flickering amid the scars. "We accept the apology," Sophia said. "But trust? That will take time. Actions, not just words." As they left the cafe, the sun breaking through the clouds, Sophia felt a weight lift, not forgiveness fully granted, but a door cracked open to possibility. Back home, Daniel pulled her into an embrace, his voice muffled against her hair. "You were incredible today. Strong, like always." She smiled, genuine and warm. "We both were. This is our life now, ours to build." In the weeks that followed, the changes bloomed. Beatrice kept her distance, but sent occasional notes, sharing glimpses of her own growth. Daniel and Sophia traveled for the first time in years, a weekend getaway where laughter replaced old silences. And one evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the city lights flicker to life, Sophia turned to him with a secret smile. "I have a surprise," she whispered, placing his hand on her belly. "We're going to be parents." His eyes widened, joy erasing the last traces of doubt. In that moment, the past's shadows faded, replaced by a future bright with promise. Sophia had not only survived the storm, she'd emerged unbreakable, her life a testament to resilience and love reclaimed. And as the stars emerged overhead, she knew this was no fragile peace, but a victory hard won and eternally hers.